our first program. You should be able to open Visual Studio by navigating to your Programs menu, or identifying it here, or you could just type it in your search box. Just type in Visual, it should pop up straight away. When it's opened, you should be presented with something like this. I'm going to take you through writing your first program here, so it's important, a couple of things are important. Firstly, not to feel too overwhelmed and just follow along here. Key thing here is that you get the process of how to set up a program, how to execute a program, and to get a feel for the process and what to do, as opposed to fully understanding maybe what you're doing quite yet. So I'm going to click on the new project button here to get us started, and you can see here under the template section we're going to choose Visual C# as our language. You can see that in Visual Studio there's lots of languages available to you, such as Visual Basic, F#, C++, Python, JavaScript and so on. So we're going to expand Visual C# here, and you can see then in the middle pane here of the dialog box I'm going to choose a console application. So our console window, it's just going to be basic console here. You can change the location of where the project is. There's a default location here, as you can see in my documents folder. There's a folder created here, so my documents for Visual Studio projects, and this is where my project is going to go here, in the projects folder. Okay, as you can see there's nothing there yet. I'll just leave that to the side for a moment. And this very first program we're going to learn is the classic first program, Hello World. I'm going to use the camel case here, capital H, capital W. You can see no spaces here between hello and world. Just click OK. So our project has now been set up, and you can see inside the projects folder, the default projects folder, this is something you can change if you wish. In there you can see there's a whole bunch of project files that have been set up for us associated with that project. You can browse deeper here and you can see all these associated files. So when I set up here, it's not just one file I'm creating here, it's a project that's contained within a directory here that's been set up. Okay, so now I'm going to identify where we start writing the code. A whole bunch of code has been set up here for us, but for now the most important thing I want us to identify is where to put our code. Okay, over time we'll learn what all this code that's been inserted means, and we'll learn to read the code. Now we'll just write our first couple of lines of code, and where you go is this set of curly braces here. Okay, just to identify a few different types of characters here. These guys are brackets, square brackets, and these curly little fellas here are known as braces. So inside these braces here, I'm just going to hit enter here, and you can see on line 13 I'm going to start writing my first line of code here. I'm going to just type in the word console. This is a console application with a capital C. You'll notice there's a sort of an autocomplete thing going on there, but we'll just ignore that for the moment. We'll learn about IntelliSense later on, okay? But for now, just copy me, pause the video if necessary, make sure you follow along. The process of typing these commands is very important, and just getting hands on yourself and typing along yourself is very important here for you to learn. Being an active learner is really key. So console.capital W for write, and no space, line. Then I'm going to open a set of brackets. You notice that that bracket automatically finishes for me. I'm going to put a quote mark, and you notice the quote's finished for me. Then I'm going to write the value that I want to display on the console, so just hello world. And the term that's used here is, this is a string literal. You can still see that I've got this red underline here, which is like a spell checker, and in your normal writing. So in this case here, it signifies what's known as a syntax error or grammar error to you and me in real language as opposed to computer language. To finish a line here, we don't. We finish a line in our own real-world sentences with a full stop or a period, but in C#, we use the semicolon to finish our line. Just going to hit enter to go on to the next line. Again, I'm going to start with console, and then with a dot, and I'm going to go with readline, capital R-E-A-D, capital N, no spaces again, console.readline this time. I'm going to open my brackets, and then I'm just going to finish the statement with a semicolon. Okay, so we've written our first 2 lines of code here, our classic Hello World program. And if this is your first time learning computer code, this will be your first run of your program. So we'll just click on the start button here. When you press it, you can see this console window pops up. You can see that the command console.writeLine has written out to the console Hello World, and then we're able to read in a line and hit the enter key, and the console should disappear for us again. I'm going to break some code here to teach us a little bit about C#. So you notice here when I try and run my code, it undergoes the build process here, and it indicates here that there's build errors and asks you would you like to continue to run the last successful build, and I'll just say no here. And you've got a whole bunch of errors that probably don't make much sense to you right now. You can put your mouse over it here. You can see it doesn't exist in the current context. What has actually happened here is it shows you the importance of placing the code in the right area of the program to have the correct structure. So you can see I've moved the code outside of these innermost braces into a different area. They don't quite make sense there. So I'll just highlight them there again by just dragging with my keyboard, right click, and cut the code. Then go back to the correct place, right click again, and paste the code in. Or some people like to prefer to use the keyword. You can just highlight with the arrow key and the shift key on your keyboard and use Control X and Control V to copy and paste. And you can see that our code is good. You'll notice when I try and build here, again we've got some syntax errors. This time you'll see that C# is quite useful here. It tells you what line the code is on, error is on, and it gives you quite a good hint here as to what the issue is here. It says semicolon expected on line 13, and there's even the little red line there, that a good indicator of where the error is and exactly what's wrong. So you pop in the semicolon here. See here on line 15, same issue, semicolon expected on line 14, and we should be sorted again. In this error here, you can see that we have a syntax error that hello world doesn't exist in the current context. That's the message we want to get out of the console, known as a string in computer programming. And anytime you present a string, it should be surrounded with our quotation marks for it to display correctly. So you can see my string here, hello world. I could change that to hello Mars. And when I press start, the exact message that's within that quotation mark is what should display here to the console. Okay, in this instance here, you can see I've got a problem with the word console here now. which is telling us that it doesn't exist in the current context. As you can see, it's spelled perfectly right. However, this informs us that C# is a case-sensitive language, and when we capitalize for console here, you can see that it resolves the issue. For our final error here, you can see same thing here. We don't recognize the word readline, and just have to make sure that the exact capitalization, the O and the L, is very important here. A lot of people find it challenging when writing computer code to get this capitalization right. Thankfully, there's tools such as IntelliSense that should help us along the way here, that you'll discover along the way to help you with that. But if you do get bogged down with syntax errors or spelling errors, as we call them here, where you missed out a capital or a semicolon or a quotation mark, or the structure isn't quite right, it's important just to become very methodical in comparing line by line your code to help you get good at resolving those kind of errors. Let's get active and quiz yourself to see what we learned in that video. Question 1. Which of these computer languages is not available in the Microsoft Visual Studio Integrated Development Environments? So is it Visual Basic, Java, C++, or C#? Okay, I went for Java here as the language because when I'm over in my Visual Studio here, little hint, when I'm setting up a new project, if you remember the dialogue at the very beginning when we're setting up a new project, you can see the languages available. C# is there, F# is there, JavaScript is there alright, C++ is there, but no sign of Java there. Don't forget to look at the questions and then pause in between. So this line of code has many problems. Which of the following is not a legitimate problem? So here's our line of code. Okay, let's go through all the possibilities here. It says the code example is missing a semicolon at the end of the line. In Visual Studio you can see that is a legitimate problem, which I'm going to fix now. Second problem here, the write line method should be capitalized as write line, capital L for line. In my code you can see there is an issue with that, and when I change that to a capital L for line, it resolves it, so that's a legitimate issue. The line should use a comma instead of a full stop between the console object and the write line method. So you can see the write line method writes hello world out to the console object here, and the dot between those, it says here, should be comma. Let's try and put that into our code. So I'll make that comma, and you can see that causes me an issue, so that is not a legitimate problem. And finally, the line should use double quotes instead of single quotes to surround a literal string. You can see here my single quotes seem to be causing a problem, so I'll change those to double quotes around hello world. And there we go. Next question. What tool or function in the code editor helps you identify a problem with your code? So a bubble dialog box that points to your problematic code, a yellow arrow next to your problematic code, a red dot next to your problematic code, or a red squiggly line underneath the problematic code. Pause and try that yourself. I've gone for D here. You can see here my problematic code here, in this case here, has a red squiggly line underneath it that indicates the problem or the issue with the code. Then we've our little help message that pops up when I mouse over it. Question 4. When you experience an issue in your code, what window will show you the errors? The immediate window, the exceptions log, the console window, or the error list? Okay, you can see here when we have some errors, the list of errors here appear in the bottom window here, the error list. This window here, of course, is your code editor where the errors have occurred, and the error list here provides you with some possible suggestions and identification of error and some possible suggestions that might lead to a solution. And finally, what's the problem with this code? Okay, first possible selection, console doesn't have a readline method, which it actually does. You should use single quotes around hello world, and we know that's not the case. You don't need to call the readline method. If we don't call the readline method, it'll actually write to the console, and the console will disappear without us being able to read the write line message. And finally, the code is not inside the correct code block defining the main method. So you can see the code block of the main method is here, and this code is outside it. When we're writing our code, the first bit of code to start any C# program goes in these innermost curly brackets in here inside the main method that's set up when you kick off a project. That's the first bit of code that will execute when you run your code in Visual Studio.